And I had
What's up, Big Nerds? My name is Tara, and this is my April wrap-up and my May TBR. April was a really hard month for me reading-wise because final season was in full effect by the first week of the month pretty much. And even though I had so much stress and was just completely worn down from school at the very end, I did somehow manage to finish 6 books. The first book I finished in April was Bell Jar by Meg Wolitzer, and this is based on Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. So Bell Jar is the story of a girl who has had a past incident that she is not going to discuss, but it's something that involves her boyfriend and has sent her into a spiral of depression. So she is sent to a school in Vermont for very intelligent kids or teenagers with some sort of mental illness, and hers is depression, and then she is placed into a class with other kids and they are given journals to write in, and these journals end up having a little bit of a magical realism element, and a bunch of things happen that bond the class, but there's also a lot of mystery surrounding what's actually going on. I had my thoughts about how this was going to go or how it was going to end. Those were not realized in this story. I was a little bit shocked by the ending, and you know, it was very interesting and I didn't expect it. So I gave this book 4 stars. If you like a good mystery story or The Bell Jar, then you might want to give this a read. The second book I finished in April was The Death of 100 Dogs by A.S. King, and I do plan to do a full review of this, at least on my blog. It is not the only A.S. King book that I haven't yet read, but one of the last ones, and it is her first novel. It is a story of a girl pirate who is so bad in her pirate days in the 1700s that at the very end of her life, she is cursed to live the life of 100 dogs, and then at the end of the 100-dog life, she comes back as a girl in the modern day. So like all of A.S. King's novels, it has a very heavy element of magical realism, but also explores just many of the issues that teenage girls or teenagers face in the world that they live in, with A.S. King's sort of signature, snarky, but extremely thoughtful eye. And I enjoy everything A.S. King writes, and this book was no exception. I gave it 5 stars. The third book I finished was The Conspiracy of Blood and Smoke by Anne Blankman. This is the sequel to The Prisoner of Night and Fog. I did not enjoy it as much as Prisoner of Night and Fog. Prisoner of Night and Fog was a 5-star book for me. It's the story of a girl who grows up as a family friend of Hitler, and she begins to realize that Hitler is not who she thinks he is as she falls in love with the Jewish news reporter. So where that story ends off, this one takes up her story. They have left Germany and they find their way back there again. And this is pre-World War II. It's in the mid-30s, so not a lot of the story is focused directly on the Holocaust, but it's the events that lead up to that, which I think were extremely fascinating. However, maybe it had just been too long since I had read the first book. I just couldn't get back into the story. It was really slow at the beginning. It did pick up. It had a pretty good mystery plot going on throughout it, but ultimately I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. The next book I finished was 99 Days by Katie Cotugno. I have her other book, How to Love, but I have not read it. And I saw this at a conference and thought, why not? Maybe I'll be in the mood for something a little lighter. And lo and behold, in April, I was in the mood for something a little bit lighter. This one I gave 4 stars, and it was mostly a result of having low expectations going into the story and being pleasantly surprised. I was expecting a contemporary novel with a lot of just like very traditional kind of contemporary stuff, and I was pleasantly surprised at some of the messages and morals of the story. So in this story, Molly has been essentially slut-shamed and forced to kind of leave her town for her senior year to go to boarding school because she was dating one boy and then slept with her brother, and this truth came out years after the fact. So when she returns, she continues to be ostracized by everyone in the community, but she realizes that the only person that she can really relate to is the brother that she slept with. So she's rebuilding some of her relationships, focusing a little bit more on her friendships and her relationship with her mother, also having her first job and realizing that she has a passion for that, while trying to figure out like who she really has feelings for and what she wants out of her life. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was a great read for what it was, which is a contemporary novel, and I do recommend it because I was pleasantly surprised on multiple levels with the story. The next book I finished was The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. You notice this is an audiobook. I have a 15-disc copy of the book that was sent to me by Simon & Schuster many months ago. It took me a very long time to get through this. While it was an enjoyable read in my car, it was not necessarily one that really kept me reading from day to day. So I had read maybe 6 of the 15 discs and then stopped for a long time, came back to it, ended up skipping a few discs. So did I really read it? I say yes. This story of how many technology innovators came to be the innovators that they are. It's interesting if you're interested in that kind of thing. I was taking a class in critical studies in new media this semester, so a lot of the things that were discussed in here were the actual articles and theory that we were reading in class, which became very interesting to me. But if I could go back, I may not end up picking this book in the first place because it was a little bit difficult to power through so much dense material that I really didn't have any background knowledge on. So that being said, while it was enjoyable as I was listening to it, it wasn't anything that really rocked my world. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. You know, there's definitely an audience for this book. It's just probably not me. And then finally, I have read Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and after all of the hype, I unfortunately was disappointed. I will have a longer review on this later because I know this is a book that many people have read and might be interested to hear my thoughts on, but ultimately I felt it was a massive task that Marissa Meyer got herself into, and she left me disappointed on multiple points of that. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was still a fun read. Once I got into it, it went pretty quickly. It's a Cinderella story with cyborgs. So, you know, what else was I going to expect? I kind of knew where it was going to go. I'm not really compelled to read the remainder of the series, but I will give more information on the precise reasons for all of that in a later review. All right, as for my May TBR, I have a lot on my plate, mostly because I requested a lot of library books that all came in at the same time. So I will either power through these or I will return them unread and cross them off of my TBR list. So I am still in the middle of The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I did not make any progress on that in April, but once I get through some other things I need to get through, I plan to return to that. I also am in the middle of a book by Dana Boyd called It's Complicated, The Social Lives of Networked Teens, which is something that I'm reading of interest to my dissertation. I also got Amy Poehler's audiobook of Yes Please from the public library, so I have loaded, it's very light right now, because I've loaded all 6 CDs into, or 6 of the 7 into my car's CD player so that I can listen to it as I drive around town. I love Tina Fey's Bossy Pants, so this is up the same alley. So far, I'm enjoying it a lot. I've also started Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I am maybe 100 pages in. I haven't really gotten to the part, I don't think, where it really picks up, like with all of the, I don't know what happens in this book, but the action of this story, but it's going so well. This is what's keeping me from reading A Secret History, because I've got the audiobook of this as well, and I'm powering through that. I'm also reading a very good ebook called The Cage by Megan Shepherd, which is the story of humans who land on a planet and realize that they are human exhibits in an alien zoo. Also, so far so good. I'm about halfway through that. I'll let you know how I think about it at the end of the month when I'm finished. And then I also got a couple other books from the public library. You'll see that I have a lot on my plate, but it's summer. I don't have anything to do, so I have nothing to do but read and make videos for YouTube. So I have The Bees by Laline Paul, which was a recommendation from Mike over at Slice of Mike. I had seen this book. I knew it's a dystopian, but involving bees in a bee colony. And Mike said that it made him empathize with a bee, which I hear his voice in my head now when I'm reading this. I am maybe 100 pages into this as well, enjoying it. And I actually will be picking up to continue reading after I finish this video. Then I got Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertelli, and all of these came in at the same time. I feel a little overwhelmed by library books right now. This was recommended to me by Layla over at Midnight Garden. She's a good friend of mine, and she said she really enjoyed it, and I respect her taste a lot, so I have the ebook and the physical book of this as well, because the library just like rained on me this month. And finally, I have The Girl on the Train by Paul Hawkins. I meant to start that this month, but did not, because as you can see, a lot happened in my TBR pile, but this should be read within the next 2 weeks, or else I have to take it back, and I don't want to do that. So that is my TBR list for May. I'll keep you guys posted at the end of the month on which of those I read and enjoy and which ones I maybe DNF and abandon, and anything that's particularly great or interesting, I will try to do an actual full review of that. A lot of my full reviews happen over at my blog, so definitely check that out if you're interested in hearing full thoughts on a lot of the things that I read. That I think is all for now. So if you have any questions, comments, things that you read that you liked, or thoughts on any of these because you've read them, please leave that for me in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching, book nerds. That's all for now. I'll see you next time. Next book I read was The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. I'm not even looking at the camera again. Checking on Goodreads to see what ratings I gave some of these books because I've forgotten.